you doing? Today we're going to see some great business animation. Now this was done by former Disney animators back in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Beautiful animation about the economy and about what happens after the whole country was shut down for World War II and had to come back. Well, that seems pretty reasonable for right now, doesn't it? I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it in just a second. Tom Reich here, and today we have, I think a good way to close out this cartoon series. Everyone's starting to go back to work. Restaurants are starting to open, stores are starting to open, and it's important to have a good economic message about what happens, in the case of these videos, what happens after a war. That you go into a depression and then you slowly come out, and why. So we're going to watch 3 excellent examples of animation. 2 about coming out of the war after World War II, and 1 then by the U.S. Petroleum Institute of why oil and petroleum are so important in America. But all 3 of these are done by former Disney animators, and they came together in Southerland Group, and they did these animations in Disney style, and they're absolutely beautiful. I think you'll enjoy what you see, and if you don't, do me a favor, subscribe and like. But for today, let's sit back and enjoy some great old Disney animation from the Southerland Corporation.
Please, thank you for this unsolicited testimonial. And now, by special permission of the Commander-in-Chief, me, here is Mars' first space explorer, Colonel Cosmic.
I can't tell you how happy I am to see your smiling faces once more. First, let me say that this trip was made possible only by our dauntless chief, Og the Magnificent, introducer of Og Power, which runs most of our industry. an inventor of Og speed, which doubles the original Og power. A short time ago, the master was having trouble with the state limousine. He had, of course, developed the explosive charge. But it was inclined to get a little out of hand, just slightly. And of course, there was always the problem of friction. Parts rubbing together, heating up, and causing all sorts of trouble. But our leader was undaunted. He immediately ordered our first expedition into space to bring back the secret of how other planets got their state limousines to run smoothly. The target was picked with painstaking scientific accuracy. Destination Earth. You all know with what eagerness I volunteered for the mission, and with what confidence I took off. I took careful bearings and set out for my goal. It seemed no time till I was approaching a country of Earth called, the United States of America. I set her down like a feather. What's all the racket? Naturally, I protected government property by making the saucer invisible. They're after the chickens, Ma! And though the natives showed great interest in me, I decided to make myself invisible, too. Seeing moving lights in the distance, I headed for them. What phenomenal luck! I had landed close to what seemed to be an endless procession of state limousines. They moved quickly, and yet with fantastic smoothness. I just had to get a closer look at one of those Earthmobiles. Just as I thought. Not only smooth and efficient, but powerful as well. I watched them for hours. Great Ganymede, they were superb. I just couldn't help comparing them with ours, if you call that a comparison. Surely these vehicles must be the property of the highest officials. I was wrong. It seems that almost everybody in this country has one of those, they call them automobiles. They use them for transportation, for business, for pleasure. They use them for all sorts of things. I found that these vehicles gather at places called service stations, where they are fed, lubricated, that's how they beat friction, and given the finest care. The source of their nourishment was something called petroleum. A power source like that must be a highly prized state secret. I had to find out about it. Perhaps the secret lay within this government archives building. It was heavily guarded, but casting discretion to the winds, I walked boldly inside. Their code was remarkably easy to break. They merely substituted the word oil for petroleum. And I soon got hold of a veritable mine of classified information. I began to assimilate the material. I soon found out that though petroleum products are easily found anywhere, petroleum itself is a very elusive substance. Experts have to search for it constantly in all the most likely and unlikely places with all kinds of scientific devices. When they figure they found a good spot, they drill a hole in the ground called an oil well, for almost all oil lies far beneath the surface of the earth. These wells go down thousands of feet and cost a lot of money to drill. But that's no guarantee that they're going to find oil. Matter of fact, in exploratory drilling, only 1 well in 9 finds any oil at all. Only 1 in 44 recovers enough oil to pay for itself. And only 1 in almost 1,000 makes a major discovery. Pretty big odds. Yet America's proved reserves, the oil supplies still underground, have kept increasing steadily. I couldn't imagine how this ever-increasing supply of oil was achieved until I found out that there's not just one, but thousands of oil companies, all competing with each other to discover and develop new sources of oil. For believe it or not, in the USA, anyone who is willing to risk it can drill for oil. But oil discovery is only part of the story. Once they get oil out of the ground, it has to be moved through pipelines, on ships, or in tank cars to fantastic processing plants called refineries. Crude oil goes in, and great Jupiter, the things that come out. Gasoline, for example, the most efficient mobile power source on Earth. That was the stuff that powered all those cars and trucks. And asphalt, which makes smooth, durable roads. It seems that oil not only runs cars, it even gives them something to run on. Another oil product is the diesel fuel, which runs giant trains across the nation. In winter, fuel oil made from petroleum brings warmth and comfort to millions of homes. And still other fuels help defend America's shores and skies. From refineries also come the lubricating oils and greases that keep the wheels turning in America. But that still isn't all. Crude oil, like everything else, is made up of billions of tiny molecules. And using the magic of research, oil companies compete with each other in taking the petroleum molecule apart and rearranging it into, well, you name it, fabrics, toothbrushes, tires, insecticides, cosmetics, weed killers, a whole galaxy of things to make a better life on Earth. And you know, it isn't just oil companies that try to outdo each other, competing for the customer's dollar. The same story is true of almost every successful business enterprise in America. The result? A higher standard of living in the USA than in any other country on the whole planet. At last, the secret was mine. And now, to get proof of my discovery, smuggled past the border guards. In spite of my infinite precautions, one of them became suspicious and gave the alarm. Come back for the eggs, did you?
Yeah, Pa!
And so, with the fond farewells of the natives ringing in my ears, I took off once again for Mars. My landing was a little bumpy, but I saved my precious cargo. Yes, I brought the secrets back with me, and here they are. The big secret is, of course, oil, which has brought a better life to all the people in the USA. But the key to making oil work for everybody is competition. Fellow Martians, I thank you.
Very interesting, Colonel. Oil, huh? Sounds splendid. But that, what was it? Competition. Not our kind of thing at all. Why, competition is downright un-Martian.
Oil? We'll have oil for everybody. That's what we need. Oh, boy, oil.
Look at them. You know what this means, Cosmic?
You bet I do, Og. It means that you're through. So why don't you get lost? Yes, the real secret is not only a great source of energy, but also the freedom to make it work for everybody. And if you have both of these things, any goal is possible. It's Destination Unlimited.
The whole world is aflame. All the peoples of the United Nations are fighting the savage enemies of freedom. In many lands, towns are ravaged, countrysides laid waste by ruthless Axis hordes. Farms, cattle, and crops have been destroyed. Ruin, destitution, hunger stalk the helpless victims of the cruel aggressor. But in their darkest hour comes a light of hope, a light that must grow stronger and will grow stronger. It is the hope of American agriculture. Though this nation must fight to keep invaders from its own shores, its farmlands are abundant, greater even than the areas of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Spain, Portugal, France, Switzerland, Great Britain, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Belgium, Holland, Yugoslavia, and Greece. And spread over this vast land are the farmers, their wives and their children. 30 million, twice as many as the Axis has soldiers. Grim farmers with sleeves rolled up, ready for sacrifices. These embattled farmers are armed. Their weapons are the panzer forces of food's battle line, farm machinery, battalions of combines, regiments of trucks, divisions of corn pickers, potato diggers, planting machines, columns of milking machines, and all these machines kept in repair by farmers and their sons under the stress of war. These farmers pouring out bumper crops to fill many a bare cupboard. The farmer with his wheat crop for this year, 52,800,000,000 pounds of wheat. If all this wheat were made into flour, there'd be enough to snow under the entire German Panzer Army. Looks to me like another Russian winter. Or if all this flour had been baked into bread, there would be enough loaves to build an Egyptian pyramid, and another, and another, and another. Placed a mile apart, they'd stretch the length of the Suez Canal. Supposing this flour had been made into spaghetti. Look at the sweater you could knit. Just a snug fit for old Mother Earth. Corn, 2,850,000,000 bushels. If all this were grown into one huge ear, it would make a bridge from London to the Black Sea. And that hangs right over your head, Adolf. Soybeans, 160 million bushels. Ground into flour, it would make a loaf that would fill Red Square in Moscow. And it has double the nutritive value of meat. Potatoes, 30 billion pounds, just about twice as high as the Rock of Gibraltar. Some potatoes. Here we have the Matterhorn in Switzerland, and this year's crop of tomatoes, 1,800,000,000 pounds. Vegetables, all kinds of them. There'd be enough to cover the wall of China, 1 billion bushels of them. Yes, and we're producing vitamins and food concentrates packed with enough power to bowl over the Axis nations. That was vitamin X, boys, just to mark the spot. Fruit juices, billions of gallons. If pressed from our fruit crop of 35 billion pounds, there would be enough to keep old faithful Geyser gushing for nearly 4 months. Or if all the fruit were made into one enormous pie, it would measure 25 miles in diameter. My, what a time a pie thrower could have with that. Milk, 125 billion pounds of it. If all this flowed over Niagara Falls in a steady stream, it would generate enough electricity to light every factory in New York for 1 hour. And besides, we'd have enough to give our children free milk with school lunches. Or should we turn this milk into butter, war-flooded fields of Holland could be reclaimed by dikes it would build. And if made into cheese, it would make a piece equivalent to this much of the moon. Just imagine a fire made from 4 volcanoes the size of Vesuvius, and a griddle 500 square miles in area. That's what it would take to broil the 30 billion pounds of meat American farms are producing. This little girl, grown plump on a diet of our 11 billion pounds of fats and oils, would outweigh 100 super dreadnoughts. And what's more, she'd black out all of Berlin. American hens are busy, too, laying 50 billion eggs. If all these were made into one huge fried egg, it would cover all the United States and Canada. And don't forget, we have enough bacon to go around it. And here come the pigs, 100 million strong. Just think of it. 2 pigs for every person in Great Britain and Ireland combined. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? Not the farmer of the United States who works and sacrifices to fill the holds of victory ships. Ships turned out by men and women working night and day. Ships that must be fought through dark oceans where submarines lurk. Ships guarded by aircraft, more and more of them. Ships protected by the blasting fire of men of war. Ships loaded with food for freedom, produced, fought through, and delivered to all who fight for the freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear. Under this insignia is shipped food that will win the war.
America is many things to many people. To a 17-year-old kid, it's the malt shop on the corner. To Grandpa, it's the front porch in the cool of the evening. To Mother and her family, it's church on Sunday morning. And to Dad, it's his favorite relaxation. It's the Cracker Barrel philosophers in Crabtree Corners. And it's the tycoons in Wall Street. It's all races, creeds, and religions. It's freedom to work at the job you like. Freedom of speech and to peaceably assemble. Freedom to own property. Security from unlawful search or seizure.
Where's your warrant, Flatfoot?
The right to a speedy and public trial. Protection against cruel punishments and excessive fines. The right to vote. And to worship God in your own way. It is these freedoms that have made America strong.
Okay, so we got our freedom. But management's lousing up everything.
Labor is at fault. It's ruining the country. My constituents, as your elected representative, I can assure you Labor's right. Management's right. I'm strictly neutral.
Labor? Management? Politicians? Hooey. Oh, they can't tell corn from oats.
Hurry, step right up, folks. Here's the answer to your problems. Dr. Utopia's sensational new discovery, ism. Ism will cure any ailment of the body politic. It's terrific. It's tremendous. Once you swallow the contents of this bottle, you'll have the bountiful benefit of higher wages, shorter hours, and security. Enormous profits, no strikes. Remember, you're the big boss. Government control, no worry about votes. Name your own salary. Bigger crops, lower cost. Why, ism even makes the weather perfect every day. And now then, because we are introducing this amazing item for the first time in this country, it isn't going to cost you 1 cent. All you have to do is sign this little scrap of paper, and you get your bottle absolutely free.
I hereby turn over to ISM Incorporated everything I have, including my freedom and the freedom of my children and my children's children, in return for which said ISM promises to take care of me forever.
Get out of the way!
Pardon me. And who are you, my good man?
I'm John Q. Public.
Ah, my fine friend, you're just in time to share this generous and gigantic offer. Sign right here.
Mind if I read it first?
Hurry up now here!
Keep your shirts on, boys.
including freedom. Freedom? Well, sign away my freedom. Why, this is ridiculous.
Don't be corny, brother.
Sure, our system of free enterprise isn't perfect. But before we throw it away for some imported double talk, let's turn the clock back a few years to see what it's done for us. For example, back in the 1890s, Joe Dokes was just a guy who liked to tinker around his barn. Some people thought Joe was lazy. Some even thought he was nuts. But one day, he had an idea. And because he was free to dream, dream, and tinker, Joe had a chance to make something of himself and his idea. So, of course, some people didn't think so much of Joe's idea. But that didn't stop him. So Joe got some money from young Aunt Minnie and Uncle Angus and Grandpappy and Mr. Titus. When Joe's friends and relatives used their savings to help him buy tools and property, they were capitalists. Don't blush, folks. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Now, naturally, Joe needed some help. So he hired Willie Lumpkin, who was out of work anyway, and before long, Willie had the know-how and became skilled labor. Because capital, management, and labor worked together, Joe's idea grew. It grew and did things even he never dreamed of. Today, the automobile industry provides millions of jobs that never existed before. And remember, this is a story of only one industry. There are thousands more scattered all over the United States whose history of development is pretty much the same. We've built a country under the American system that sends more young people to high school and college than all the rest of the world combined. Why, even in the Depression, our wages bought more food, clothing, travel, and entertainment than the wages of any other people in the world. Our country has a national income equal to the total national incomes of any other six nation in the world. With only 7% of the Earth's, we drive 70% of the world's automobiles. That's just a sample of the things the capitalistic system has given us in only 160 years. Before signing up, you boys ought to try a little taste of Dr. Ism's formula to see what you'd get in exchange for your freedom. Go ahead, try it.
You can't do this to me! I'll strike!
The state forbids strikes.
Wait till the union hears about this!
Ah, yes, the union. Welcome to our ranks, number 1313.
I'll take this case to the Supreme Court.
The state is the Supreme Court. Our decision is as follows. No more private property. No more you.
The farm folk will put a stop to this.
Farmers don't vote anymore.
What'll I do for seed next year?
You won't have to worry about next year. The state will do your planning from now on.
We must fight to regain our freedom, or everything is lost. Everything!
Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine.
When anybody preaches disunity, tries to pit one of us against the other through class warfare, race hatred, or religious intolerance, you know that person seeks to rob us of our freedom and destroy our very lives. And we know what to do about it.
Now, gentlemen, no violence, please. Don't throw those bottles. Don't throw those bottles!
Working together to produce an ever greater abundance of material and spiritual values for all. That is the secret of American prosperity.
In the inspired union of our 48 states, we Americans have forged a great nation and a glorious history. We have a great volume of experience. Open pages and thrilling scenes show us that war has always had two fronts. The fighting front with its fury of battle, the destruction of property, the loss of life. And behind the lines, the civilian front with its job of living and producing. In the Napoleonic Wars, there was no effective price control. To get the necessities of life, people had to pay so much money in the first year of these long and bitter wars. For the same amount of goods in the second year, people were forced to pay more money. And still more in the third. This price rise continued until Napoleon finally surrendered at Waterloo. Then came a rapid fall in prices with resulting depression. In the Civil War, we had no effective controls, and prices continued upward until the end of the war. Then came another swift fall in prices. Hard times came again. During World War I, inadequate controls let prices rise rapidly until the armistice. This inflationary rise stopped momentarily, then climbed to the dizziest peak in history before the country fell into disastrous depression. Let's examine closely this first great industrialized war. First came wartime inflation. Then a new thing happened. We had post-war inflation. Deflation and depression followed. Wartime inflation occurred because stores that in peacetime had enough for those able to buy could not be supplied by many factories, which had to convert to war production. More people had to be employed to produce the weapons needed for victory. This meant that people had more money than there were goods to buy. Prices were bid up. Inflation resulted. Post-war inflation came because reconversion did not happen overnight. Civilian goods were hard to obtain. It took time to transfer men and machines to peacetime production. Those goods that were available were quickly bought by returning veterans who needed clothes and other things. By war-torn countries that needed relief. By people who showed little or no restraint in their buying. Scarce goods became scarcer. Prices were bid up higher and higher. Inflation continued. Deflation started when fewer and fewer people could afford to buy. Goods piled up in stores. Orders to factories were cut. The plants began to lay off workers. This reduced buying power. Slow-moving goods forced storekeepers to cut prices and cancel more orders. Factories had to lay off more workers. This reduced buying power still further. Merchants, in an effort to clear their shelves, cut prices below cost. But trade was near a standstill. Stores closed. Factories without orders also closed, and still more workers were laid off. Farmers lost their farms on the auction block. Farm foreclosures mounted. Business failures increased. Unemployment became widespread. Such is the lesson of history in wars without adequate price control. When World War II blasted the start of a new chapter in our history, prices began to rise. But this time, your government had the foresight to establish effective price and rent controls. And with the magnificent cooperation of the people of the United States, the price rise was checked and controlled until final victory. World War II experience demonstrated that controls can hold the line. World War I experience demonstrated that inadequate controls will bring inflation, followed by deflation and resulting misery. History puts this urgent question squarely up to us. Which way this time? There can be but one answer. The fight against inflation must go on. Price and rent controls will work only if we cooperate as we did during the war. It's easy for anyone to think that paying more than the ceiling price just once won't do any harm. But it won't be done just once. It will be done hundreds and thousands of times. If black market buying and selling ever became a habit, then the price structure would blow up into inflation and drop us into deflation. And instead of a few men out of jobs as a result of reconversion difficulties, millions of workers and veterans would be unemployed. Price control and rent control, to be effective, must have the cooperation of all the people in the reconversion period. They can help bring goods back on the shelves of the nation's stores. Goods at prices people can pay. This will bring more customers into stores. Customers that will enable merchants to place more orders for more goods. Then factories can employ more people. People to produce the flood of goods that will make controls no longer necessary. The full production of goods at prices people can afford to pay can bring an even higher standard of living to all the people of the United States and contribute to the peace, security, and stability of the entire world.
Hit, hit, hit.